If you're looking to find a big block Chevy oil pan for your application, Moroso Performance has you covered. What we're going to show you today is the full spectrum of what Moroso can offer you for a big block Chevy wet sump oil pan. And these three examples are going to give you an idea of what you need to look for when selecting a wet sump oil pan for your big block Chevy. Over here we have a 20403 oil pan. It's been one of the most common pans that Moroso's had for many decades. And what this pan is, it's a Gen 4 base core pan, which is coming from a big block that was built from the 1970s on. We've taken the stock core, welded a larger sump on it at 8 inches deep for more oil capacity. And as engines increase in horsepower, they need more oil in the sump to keep up with the higher RPMs and the larger flow demands that higher horsepower engines have. This is what we call a street strip pan. It'll fit into most front ends of most GM cars. Because we're using a stock core, it's got notches built into it to go in the most front ends. It's about 4.5 inch deep in the front, tapers down, and then in the vicinity of where the stock sump was, Moroso puts on a more squared off, wider kicked out sump. In the case of this pan, we have 45-degree notches on the front corners to clear some of the steering. Other pans we have are squared off on the corners. And this is where understanding what type of chassis and application you have is important to make sure this pan fits. Internally, we've put a directional screen in it and a scraper to help get oil off the rotating assembly to make more power. And inside, that is a trapdoor baffle, and that'll help under heavy braking, whether it's on a street strip car driving on the road or at the drag strip. This pan will accept any cast style oil pan with a pickup on it, 8 inches deep. Has a little bit of a baffle in the back here for acceleration so the oil doesn't climb up. We have a provision for universal dipstick that Moroso offers you a couple different varieties that typically bolt onto a header flange. And when you have a new engine build, you can set your dipstick height knowing how much oil that you've put in this pan. Typically these pans, 6.5 to anywhere up to 7.5, in some cases 8 quarts with the oil filter, depending on the characteristics of the engine. And as with all the pans that you're going to see here that are steel, zinc plated to keep from corroding. And actually, our customer feedback has told us a great base for painting and powder coating that the zinc plating offers. And as with any Moroso oil pan, fully welded sump, everything made right here in the United States. If you're looking to make more horsepower, a little bit bigger stroke, where this will accommodate up to about a 4.5 inch stroke with a steel rod. You want to go with a larger stroke, maybe you got a little bit more front end clearance with a modified cross member. 21047 would be the next step to go to, where this is a steel drag race pan. One of the biggest differences you'll see is it's a squared off sump on the front, fully length front sump on it, unlike the stock core one we showed you here. We're still using the stock core, but now we've done a full length sump welded 5 inches deep, squared to the rear, and has a little bit of a power pouch kick out on it to allow that oil to come off the rotating assembly and go somewhere versus bouncing back onto the rotating assembly. This also has solid louver tray with partitions in it. And it's full length, unlike the shorter screen, because we have the depth going in the front, we can stay uniform from the rotating assembly all the way to the rear. Now this pan we've actually had on a 4 3/4 stroke motor before. Typically 4 5/8 is a really good place for this. 4 3/8, excellent combination to 4.5 inch stroke. These are very, very popular in the drag racing industry. Your 565s, your 582s, probably one of the most common pans from all the big name engine builders. They're using this pan. The other thing is, in the rear sump here, it's a lot larger than that one is, because this will accommodate the Moroso built aluminum bodied oil pumps. Whether it's the larger gerotor pump, but the most common one is the Spur gear pump that is basically an offshoot of a cast style pump, but with a billet housing. Fits in here perfectly. Doesn't need any rear baffle because the pump acts almost as a baffle. This thing will make up to 1200 horsepower, no problem. We do have a dipstick provision, and if you choose to have this in a street strip, pro street type car. Both of these pans you can use bolts or studs and nuts. Both of these pans will work with stock type timing covers all the way up to a belt drive type timing cover. But once we've gone the next step farther, whether it's a larger stroke, many power adders, we're making a lot of horsepower, or we have a full tube front end like a dragster or some full chassis door cars, the next step would be a Moroso Race Pan. Now, Moroso Race Pan is fully fabricated from the ground up, no cores, and typically are built in aluminum. Now, one of the first things you're going to notice is we only have 3 bolts on the side, where we still have our 2 on the back and the front. This is what's known as a race pattern. The race pattern, a lot of blocks come drilled for both nowadays, and you'll see when you buy a block, you'll see the bolt holes next to the main caps. By doing that, we've allowed it where you can actually increase the stroking clearancing on the block and the pan without running in any stock fasteners. These 2 pans here will take a 4-piece or the newer style 1-piece gaskets that Moroso makes. This pan requires a 4-piece gasket where 1-piece cannot be modified to work on these. Many of the clearancing on these things has been increased for anywhere up to a 4 3/4 and in some case even a 4 7/8 stroke with a steel rod. Again, the solid louver tray with partitions, a lot more area inside this. Some of the other benefits this oil pan has, which is our brand new 20485 pan, is an alternator notch, drain plugs at the front and the side depending on whether you're jacking up a door car or a dragster, they drain differently. We have dash AN female drain back bungs so you can drain back oil from the cylinder heads to the pan, which is more common in some of the bigger race motors. We also have an access bung down here so you can adjust the bypass on the gerotor oil pump that Moroso builds. This pan also has a starter notch for 168 tooth passenger side starter, which is simply a stock location. And you can see that we still have notched the front of the sump, which will allow a certain amount of modification on the front end of cars, but it's feasible to modify that and actually make this pan fit in a stock front end car. This pan, we've had up to 1,800 horsepower on this pan, and this is your more high-end race pan. So hopefully we've covered the bases, understanding the different varieties from a street strip to a drag race core base to a full-out drag race oil pan. These are the 3 options that Moroso offers you. We've shown you some of the differences on it. Now, if you have any questions on exactly what the best application would be for your motor, your chassis, your stroke, and your horsepower rating, go to the Moroso website at moroso.com. We can give you more information, or better yet, call the Moroso Tech Department and they'll be able to help you out and find the exact pan that'll work for your application.